there should be any exceptions built into this levy, and if so, how might that work? Justin, I'll give you the first go here.
I have to admit, not exactly having an answer to this, but I think the example that I used before, and I think just the fact that the way that individuals are using things like their iPods or any sort of recording device makes it incredibly difficult to have a broad levy. I will admit not having the answer to exactly how you deal with that, but I think it's clear that I will agree wholeheartedly with David that there is a clear understanding that properly paying for the materials that we take from someone makes sense. The question is, how do you do that in a way that doesn't infringe upon individuals' ability to use a product in the way that they see fit? And if that means that they're going to use a product that has the possibility of being used for the copying of other people's intellectual property, but could also be used for the copying of your own intellectual property, how do you do that in a fair way? And that's what I currently don't see happening.
First of all, you talk about exceptions. Already the Act provides for exceptions for the perceptually disabled. Mm-hmm. Right? In 1997, when the law was passed, we supported that. Secondly, at our first hearing in 2000, we voluntarily created and continue to maintain a zero rating program for a wide range of groups from which they are exempted from paying the levy in its entirety. We're talking about court reporters, convention operators, commercial manufacturers who don't copy music. In other words, it's all on our website, CPCC.ca. We have a very widespread zero rating program which nets us no money, which costs us money to administer. So where people are making extensive use of discs, and extensive isn't a particularly high barrier in this case, they don't have to pay the levy. The point of the levy is to get at situations where the medium is being used in a significant way to copy music. Now, the definition in the Act of what media qualify states that it has to be a medium that is ordinarily used by individuals for the purpose of copying sound recordings. There's all kinds of media upon which you could copy sound recordings. You could copy sound recordings onto dictation microcassettes. Nobody does. We've never sought a levy. We looked into the question of seeking a levy on recordable DVD. We couldn't come up with sufficient evidence that people actually use it to copy music. We have not sought a levy on that. We couldn't come up with adequate evidence to show that on memory cards or chips or strips or RAM in its raw form that people are copying music. Thus, we're not seeking a levy on it. We're seeking and getting a levy on the media that people are using to copy music. And presently, that's mini disc to the extent it still exists, cassette, which still matters a little bit, and largely blank CDs, which is on the decline. DARs, digital audio recorders, MP3 players, iPods and the like, are definitely used to copy music. The intention of the Act is to realize the value in the copies that people make for their private use of music. There is no distinction between a blank CD and the use of an iPod or the iPod equivalent from another manufacturer. The bottom line is that technologies have changed to the point where what was formerly a removable medium associated with a recording device, where the two have been integrated. But the activity and the use of the asset has not changed. People are still copying music for their private enjoyment, which is fine. We don't have an issue with that. What we do have an issue with is that we're not getting any compensation for it.
Yeah, and David?
Well,
Assumptions?
I think that's exactly the problem. There's two parts to the problem. One is keeping track of who should be paying compensation and who shouldn't. And the other one is, what do you do with people who are copying copyright works that belong to third parties, but they don't belong to this collective?
First of all, I can tell you exactly the answer to that. The Copyright Act requires CPCC to hold money for so-called orphans, for those who are not represented by any of the constituent collectors of CPCC, and we have an active program of trying to locate and pay those people. So there's the answer to that question. The first question of figuring out who to pay, it's very simple. When the levy applies to a medium, you attach it to all those who manufacture or import the medium in question, and we have a reasonably good track record of locating and dealing with such people.
Oh, but you're going to also have to figure out, what proportion of the use of a device on average is going to be attributable to the works of your authors.
And
that's going to take, as you say, constant surveys and constant involvement.
And the process by which that is determined is in the handling of valuation evidence before the Copyright Board. Mm-hmm. As you probably know, Copyright Board exercises are otherwise the battle of the expert witnesses. We put forward an economist, they put forward an economist, and the board makes a decision, and you move on.
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
Okay, I want to get to my last question here today, and this one deals with the issue of competition and retailers. some might say there's a concern if you bring in a levy, say on iPods, for example, that Canadian retailers might be hurt by Canadian consumers seeking to buy that sort of digital media across the border, maybe whether it be over the internet or in many places in Canada. It's a fairly short drive to go across the border, and we know that people do this to go shopping now anyway. Are Canadian retailers perhaps at a disadvantage as a result of a possible levy?
This argument's been made since the beginning, and there's never been any evidence tendered before the Copyright Board of any significant distortion of the market. As a matter of fact, in 42 countries where there is a levy, the introduction of the levy has never distorted the market or driven it down. Now, obviously, there will be people who say, I'll be damned if I'm ever going to pay a levy to those people. I will go across the border the next time I want to buy blank CDs. Perhaps some people do, and perhaps some people, when they're shopping across the border, may pick it up while they're there. Obviously, some of that goes on. But our information is that for the most part, the cross-border shopping has been something of a more talked about than seen in actuality. And obviously, if the levy is something in the nature of $20 or $25, query whether somebody's going to go all the way across the border to save that much money. You know, there are differences in currency, there's costs to travel as well. Our experience is that the cross-border issue is, believe me, Walmart tried to make that case and failed. So we don't think it's a measurable impact.
I mean, 90% of our population lives within 100 miles of the United States. Every industry has this problem. How do we compete with the different price levels across the border? It's just something we have to live with.
Justin?
I'll agree with that, but I'll go a step further and just mention, going back to my earlier points, that one of the fears that we have isn't necessarily the competition with the United States, but that moving forward with the recording devices and trying to improve the way that the universities and colleges and the academic world uses these devices within the classroom, one fear is that adding new levies and adding new costs to it will mean that they'll become less desirable for students and universities to actually take advantage of, which is a worry for us.
Okay. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank each of my guests. This has been a great discussion. And remember to go and make your contributions to the copyright consultation before it finishes on September 13th. The address is copyright.econsultation.ca. For ITBusiness.ca, I'm Brian Jackson.